Hi everyone, my name is Annalise Fernandez, and I'm going to be talking to you about the Gujarat earthquake that happened in India in 2001. The Gujarat earthquake was a 7.7 magnitude quake that happened in Gujarat, India. The epicenter was in the village of Bhuj, and it was an exceptionally long earthquake. It lasted over 2 minutes. Here is a diagram of the plate. The science behind the event. This was caused by the Indian plate pushing northward into the Eurasian plate. There's a compression boundary that forms between those two plates, and that's what pushes up into the Himalayan mountains. The depth of the earthquake was extremely shallow, and for that reason, the earthquake was stronger because the seismic waves travel up a shorter distance. They're usually absorbed as they travel up, and so the shallower earthquake meant that the quake was stronger. Additionally, the land in the region where the earthquake struck is comprised of primarily soft sediment, which made the damage greater because there's less of a foundation for like buildings and infrastructure, and there's more shifting when everything shakes. And this was also an unusual earthquake because it happened 400 kilometers southeast of the tectonic boundary, and typically they happen closer to that boundary. And additionally, there were over 500 aftershocks that were 3-point magnitude or greater that happened after the earthquake in the following weeks. And here's a diagram that shows the plate boundary and how the Himalayas are formed there. And it also, you can see here, this is the sediment, and this is where, this is where the land is, it's actually softer than like your typical land. There was tremendous damage after this earthquake. This slide kind of goes through some of the numbers of people killed, injured. There were people also affected in Pakistan. People felt the earthquake all throughout India as well as in Pakistan and Nepal. There was a ton of damage to infrastructure. Multiple homes were destroyed and damaged. It left many people homeless. There was also a lot of problems with other social infrastructure. For example, health clinics, schools, water supply was cut off and limited at times, and phone lines were down, which also made it really difficult to communicate and kind of establish safety and numbers. So these numbers are estimates because there's no way to know for sure exactly how many people were killed because the damage was, again, tremendous. So the reconstruction after the earthquake, the money for the construction came primarily from the government of Gujarat, the Indian government, NGOs, and then aid from other agencies. So the European Union, the US, Canada. The World Bank also donated or loaned a tremendous amount of money. So that's where the funding came for the reconstruction of the city. The reconstruction of Gujarat after the earthquake was actually very fast compared to other places. For example, Japan after the earthquake, Gujarat reconstructed much faster because there was a lot of money given. However, there is also controversy and many conversations to be had about the way the reconstruction happened. There were more jobs that were reported to be created afterwards. There was a ton of industrialization. Gujarat became a big hub for steel and petroleum and those kinds of industries, which actually boomed after the earthquake in that like newly reconstructed and modernized in many ways city. But again, that leads to questions about who is driving and the type of reconstruction and who has a stake in it and how that actually benefits the people there. For example, a lot of that money came from big financial institutions like the World Bank, rather than like government funding, as well as from big corporations in India and A lot of the NGOs get their money from corporations because in India the corporations are required to donate a percentage of their profits to nonprofits, and in turn that gives them a lot of power into the way those nonprofits are run. And that's, as a sociology major, that's something we talk a lot about in the US context, the nonprofit industrial complex. So, the way that the privatization of social services, such as disaster relief, falls onto the backs of these nonprofits when government money isn't set aside or spent on mitigation and then reconstruction when these things do occur. So, similar to the way we talk about other reconstruction efforts after natural disasters, like Hurricane Katrina, for example, there's a lot of conversations to be had about who has a voice in the way the cities are reconstructed, and where's that money coming from, and what are the potential consequences, long-term consequences, as well as who's being helped in the short term. One thing I forgot to mention, another thing with these kind of like this like pouring of money into the city, there's not a lot of local involvement, so you sometimes have these organizations that don't understand the way the local government or culture works, making these big decisions that have huge impacts on people's lives. And moving forward to future mitigation, so afterwards there was a lot of focus on a multi-hazard reconstruction, so ensuring that the city would be prepared for multiple types of natural hazards, for example, cyclones, floods, as well as earthquakes. And there was also a big emphasis on community awareness, so understanding what happened with the earthquake, why things happened that way. So, for example, there was information distributed in newspapers, there were community educators, and like information sessions for people to go to, as well as large display boards. And that's all. Here are my references. And I'll also upload my notes in a Word document because that has more information if you have any other questions. And then I have my notes organized by which site I got them from, so that can be helpful if you want to follow up on any of these things. Thank you.